All right, folks. Hello, hello, hello. Just want to make sure the mic is working, all those good things. Yeah, it looks like we're good. And how about that little intro? Um, just trying some things on this Melon app. So, hello to everybody. Um, and hello to Tatiana. I think I got your message now. You were saying you're a nursing student and at York, a master in nursing. And I also can't wait to chat with you. So thanks for saying hello um, early on. Now, just let me know if anybody, if there's something you can't hear, like the microphone, things like that. Um, we will be all good. So let's get started. Just a couple things. I'm just going to get situated on all of this. I think we're good for the most part. Got the mic or anything like that is not working. Just let me know. Got some music and so forth playing in the background. Hope it's an okay volume. All right. So here's what we got planned for today. It's another live stream. Welcome. I am Dr. Rich Shavner, an assistant professor in the writing department at York University. So today we're focusing on video and mobile technologies for writing. And later we'll be joined by Dr. Laura Allen. She's an assistant professor of activist rhetorics in the writing department. So I'm really excited to have her on. What we do a lot on this stream is a kind of mix of workshopping and things of that sort, talking about ideas. And then we also have guest chats. So it doesn't happen all the time, but it seems like it's becoming sort of a regular thing. And I'm really liking that. I think this dialogue that we see in the chat, as well as what we see in these kind of live sessions is, with guest chats is also really exciting. And so just a couple quick overviews, and then I'm going to give you a rapid workshop before we bring in Dr. Allen. So last week we looked at writing with sound. You could also check that out on our YouTube page if you haven't seen it yet. It's available, and all live streams are on demand, so do check those out on our YouTube page. Today, like I said, we're doing video and mobile technologies. Next week, we're talking about self-care and the writing process. So what does it mean to kind of take care of yourself while you're sort of working through these complex ideas? What places do we find ourselves working in? What are our habits that, to really take care of our eyes, our bodies, our mind, things like that. So we'll talk about that. The following week, we'll look at moving writing from the page to the web. So if you're thinking about, lots of ideas for what you do with your essay and how you get it ready for something like WordPress or another template, or even doing some hand coding, you've got some options there. And then we'll end the stream series for this term with cozy vibes and winter writing prompts. So again, really excited to bring you all in those conversations. So let me switch real quick to a couple different tabs here. I'm gonna hide this on the stream real quick, and then we can share the next one. Let's see, screen. I'm gonna go there, trying out this new thing. So you might be wondering why use video. And what I talked about last week, and I want to stress again, is that writers are often using available means of persuasion to tell stories. So enacting sort of multi-literacies, as what they sort of say in writing studies circles and media studies circles, mixing text, audio, and visuals to tell stories. So it might start with a text, but we're using audio and video to enhance some of those persuasive arguments we might be working on. And so Adam Banks, Jim Rodolfo, Jody Shipka, Crystal Van Kooten have talked about this at length, the idea that for drawing on these available means such as audio and video, we can make a greater impact, especially in digital media circles. Also, journals are now offering options to submit video abstracts with textual submissions. So if you look at Taylor and Francis, for example, they're a publishing service that publishes a range of peer-reviewed journals, also has book series and so forth. They invite authors now to submit video abstracts for their research. So it's a way of introducing your research in your own words, but through a video offering. And so what they suggest is making it, 1 to 2 minutes, making it clear and accessible. And they have some good examples that are listed here for, how to do a video abstract. So this is an example of making women into a protagonist, midwives reimagine the Mexican childbirth narrative. And here's what it looks like.
Cultural narratives shape the way that women think about childbirth. Narratives tell them what to expect and how to behave when they go into labor and interact with the healthcare system. These narratives get passed down in many ways, from family, healthcare providers, and even television shows. My research focuses on how the childbirth narrative in Mexico shapes women's experiences and their health outcomes. Midwives are critical of the way that women are treated in Mexican hospitals. They say that we need to change the conditions within which women give birth. We need, in their words, to make women into the protagonists of their own births. In this paper, I analyzed drawings and a community theater production made at 2 Mexican midwifery schools. In these creative depictions, we see the critiques of the current childbirth narrative. We also see midwives' counter-narrative, which emphasizes women's choice and power and calls for more midwives in the healthcare system.
So you can see really quickly, this author is getting at what the main argument is. And they recommend a number of video sort of approaches, what the specs are and so forth, how to send it, what tools you can use. So some familiar things you might know are, Apple iMovie, creating videos on YouTube, GoAnimate, WeVideo, Adobe Spark. Now for this workshop or live stream, I could talk about all of those, but I'm talking about something a little, I think it's even simpler for the process of doing something like this. So if you're looking to make maybe say your first video and it's sort of maybe it's for an asynchronous class, it's a kind of presentation or a quick overview of a project you're working on, or maybe you do want to do a video abstract along with your essay for one of your classes, your final paper, this might be for you. All right, so let me go ahead and just click on out of that, as well as this one here. We'll turn up the tracks a little bit, and then kind of go through this. All right. So also, while I'm getting this ready, I want to mention too that all of the resources I'll be featuring in this stream, questions and so forth that we have for Dr. Allen later on, are in the show notes of the video description of this. So feel free to check that out. Now, what I'm going to recommend for the purpose of this stream is something called Headliner. It's an app that essentially lets you make quick kind of video trailers, especially if you were doing like a podcast. But I think for students, if you're just kind of doing a quick recording, let's say of parts of your argument, and you want to layer one audio file with some interesting video that could be of yourself or not, and you want to say put that into on YouTube, or you want to put that in and embed that with, like, say, your essay, this is what you can do. So headliner.app is what we'll be kind of working from, and this is what I have in this description as well. The instructions for following and kind of building this and getting it online rather quickly. So in this description, there's an audio file I'm linking for everybody. I'm going to put this into the chat as well. And if I can find it, let's see. All right. So here it is. I think that should work. And this is a Dropbox link I have to something that's on freesound.org. It's called Power Words English. And unfortunately, it's not quite available on Freesound right now because I think the site is actually down as of this morning. So we'll have to work around that a little bit. So it's just a quick, run through of some interesting words that this author speaks through. And you're going to want to download that onto your desktop or, preferred laptop file, whatever you have. And then after that, you'll open up headliner.app. So that link is available in the description. So we've opened it. Just to kind of move through and give you a sense of what you're capable of doing on this, I'm not going to spend time talking about the login and so forth. I'll just go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you how this works so that you have a sense of getting into it, and you can refer back to it a little later. Okay, so let's just say you've logged in and you want to make something. What's really nice is at the home screen, once you're logged in, you click on Advanced Editor on the bottom right here. Great for video creators. There's also audio options too. You'll go to Landscape, and then from this point, you've got some options. Now, let's just say you've already thought of your audio file and you're going to start kind of dragging it in and working with it. What's the audio that you want to add? What's nice is you can even see just down here, there's a sort of plus bar where you can add the file right there. So if I've downloaded PowerWords English already, it's good to go. Let me just go ahead and do that real quick one more time so I don't lose my place. We'll put it on the desktop. Probably can't see it on my end, but that's okay. We get that ready. We add the file. Oh, we need to step back 1 second. Okay, so we're on audio. We're going to add this file. And I am going to go to my desktop. It always wants to start me right from the beginning. That's okay. So it's going to process it for you. It's going to tell you sort of how everything's working. And then let's just give this a little listen because I think it shows up on this end as well. I think you should be able to hear it.
Welcome. Peace. Love. Joy. Hope. Compassion. Mystery.
So some nice words there. Just let me know if that's not coming through as well. I'm very curious to see if this is actually making its way onto the stream. I know sometimes when you're working with this Melon app, you gotta enable the tab for sharing. So we'll see if it actually is doing what I want it to do. All right. So this is going to take a second just to add. And what we're going to do from there is at this point, let's just say, you've added your audio file and so forth, and you can do some mixing later on. What we'll do real quick is at this point, you've read the script. We did this sort of last week as well. You've put the audio file in, and then you want to do something like, a nice image. What's really cool is when you click on media here, it actually shows you some options. You can click on videos on the left and then on Pixabay for ideas. And Pixabay, as we may have talked about on past streams, is an open access or Creative Commons way of introducing videos. So let's just say you're saying like abstract or something like that. What are you looking for? Something like this you could add. Maybe it's more relevant to the kind of messaging you're thinking about, for this video abstract, if you will. And then you're just going to add that to this. All right, so I'm going to bring in our guest as well for just a minute, and maybe some of her impressions as well about using something like Headliner. Okay, so give me 1 second. And says, double check. There she is. Okay. Hey, Dr. Al, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm so glad that this application is working.
Me too.
On the live stream.
Can you hear me well?
I can hear you very well. Thank you.
Okay, good.
So, Dr. Al, I'm going to introduce you in just a second, but I was telling everybody about this Headliner app. I think you might be able to see it on the screen as well right now for making things. So, folks, what I was kind of getting at here is, using these kind of Creative Commons files along with your audio files could make something just like this within a few minutes. Now, if you're just trying to get everything together, you're obviously going to want to spend more time kind of finessing things like tracks and things of that sort. but it would sound just like this, within a few minutes.
Welcome. Peace. Love. Joy. Hope. Compassion. Mystery. Unity. Equality. Creativity. Freedom. Health. Spirit. Inspiration. Release.
So, Laura, have you heard of this program? I was curious if you've happened to use this
No,
before.
I have not. This is my first time hearing about it and seeing how it works.
Yeah. Did it play on your end? Could you hear the audio?
Mhm.
Awesome. Okay. Good stuff. Yeah. So that's just an example, folks, of what you can do with something like Headliner, and it's going to require a sign up. There are some limitations when it's free. You're limited to one audio file, one video file you can sort of drag in on the timeline, but it gives you a sense of what's possible if you're just trying to get started kind of quickly with working with video and telling stories that way. So, all right, so I'll click away from this for just a second, and we'll do the official introduction, Dr. Allen, if that sounds good to you.
Sounds great.
All right, let's stop sharing there. Okay, so we are official. So first, just want to do this nice introduction. So welcome to joining us. As I was saying before, it's awesome. We love doing these guest chats here on the live stream, and so excited that you could join me for this chat.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. All right, and let's do I'm going to show them your official bio page because it's awesome. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So this is Dr. Allen's bio. Dr. Laura Allen, she's a committed teacher and scholar whose research explores race at the intersection of professional writing, digital media, and community literacy. She has earned a PhD in English from the Rhetoric, Composition, and Literacy program at The Ohio State University. Lovely place. That's where we met a few years back. Her current project explores the role of digital and professional writing in the planning and sustaining of Black family reunions. Laura has presented at several national and international conferences, including the Conference on College Composition and Communication, 4Cs, and the Humanities, Arts, Science, and Technology Alliance and Collaboratory, or HASTAC. Laura is a recipient of the 2020 Crittel Digital Media Fellowship and the 2018 Digital Pedagogy Lab Fellowship, and was selected for the 4C Scholar for the Dream Award for 2019. So again, welcome. And I'm thinking we've probably known each other probably 3 years or something like that. We met at Ohio State when you were the assistant director of the Digital Media Composition Institute, right?
Yep. And now we're both at York.
I know, it's amazing. And I think what's even more amazing is that most of your time here at York has been behind the screen, or on screen.
Yes.
So, yeah. Are you excited to get back to campus or to actually see your office?
I am really looking forward to being able to get back to campus and feel the vibe. I was only able to visit campus pre-pandemic one time, and I love the energy on campus. And so that was really the last time I remember seeing York as York is. So I'm looking forward to being able to go back and interact and get the vibe of the campus in my heart. I've got the digital vibe down. Now I'm looking forward to seeing what it's like.
Yeah, and like got to design a whole new office space and things like that. What are you teaching right now? Can you remind us, just for everybody who's checking out the stream right now?
So my undergraduate course is Rhetoric, Strategy, and Applications. And I'm also working with the Writing Center, with the Graduate Cafe, where I'm working with graduate students who are working on dissertations.
Yeah, exciting. I mean, and I know some of us who've been on chatting in the stream have been working on their dissertations and talking about that process. So it's still close to me. I'm sure it is for you as well, relating to them and what that whole enterprise is like. It's amazing. Just out of curiosity, is anyone you've been working with in the dissertation thinking about like video or any kind of, multimedia ways of doing dissertations? And it seems to be kind of a rising sort of thing, it seems like, with at least in our field.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that in our field. So not too many in the cafe that are sort of working around particular technology. I think one person is sort of working on a science and technology related project, but more so writing about the technologies than working and composing with the technologies. A distinction that maybe we'll get to a little later.
Yeah, right. I mean, I was curious for you, like, what are some ways you've approached or thought through video or mobile technologies, like in your own work as a researcher? Because you do some really amazing work on Black family reunions and sort of their digital media professional writing practices. I wonder how that kind of stuff figures into your own trajectories.
Absolutely. So my work with Black family reunions actually started as a side project where I was thinking about building a mobile app for my family reunion, and thought, wow, this would be really good for other family reunions too. Family reunions, particularly Black family reunions, because they have a really interesting history. Family reunions, were something that was just sort of over here, not tied to work or religious spaces or school, or really family focused events. And the reunions that I'm used to, they are large events where you are coordinating travel and events for sometimes up to 200, 300 people. And so I thought, okay, this would be a really good idea for my family if we could create a mobile app, because we have family members of all ages, and not everyone is on, Facebook or Meta or whatever it's called now. I think it's still called Facebook, but not everyone is online, but most people have a mobile device. So how can we sort of take advantage of that and create a space where my great aunt, who's a little bit older, but she's really involved with playing games on her phone and is sort of comfortable with that technology. How can we create a space where people can not only just consume, but add information if they want to add a picture or they want to add a message? And so that's how my interest in Black family reunions really started, was thinking about composing a mobile app for my family. And so then it sort of grew into me looking at other aspects of family reunion. And so I think that idea, there's sort of two branches. It sort of grew into thinking more about family reunions, and then it grew into me thinking more about composing with, for, and about mobile technology. So I got to explore the mobile technologies part a little bit more. At my previous institution, with one of my collaborators, Gavin Johnson, we designed a course about composing with mobile technologies, which definitely hoping to bring some of that here to York. That would be really exciting to think through that. And so that's where that idea landed. It just a lot of little other ideas grew out of that one. So
love that. I mean, what happened to that app later on? I know, like, that was around the time you were also working probably on your dissertation and things like that. But,
yeah, it was the whole dissertation and then just the surprise pandemic situation. But there are still things there. Just have to figure out a plan to weave it in. So when designing mobile apps, one of the things that we did in the class I taught about mobile technologies is you have to create mock-ups. So you have to create sort of a visual, really basic, can be really basic sketches of, okay, what exactly is this going to look like? What will the function of this app be from screen to screen? So all of that is still there. It's just a matter of thinking through what to do next and how I would want to approach that next as a personal project, and also looking at the market, seeing what's out there and how would my app be different. But yeah, so that's where it's at, and hopefully within the next few months or so, I can revisit that and pick it up again.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing project, and I imagine like now, especially in our field, where we're so into web text and other production, I could see that being just like its own sort of digital argument, like in a way
Mhm.
of prototyping it. And some of my
Yeah.
students have worked with like XD and other prototyping, spaces. It's so cool that now you can in a pretty efficient way, look at like what something would look like mobily or on the screen or even just a mock-up. Um,
Yes. Mhm.
it's very easy to get lost in those spaces too while you're tinkering and
Yeah, it's a lot of fun just in creating those and thinking through what direction the technology will take. It's a lot of fun.
Mhm. You mentioned one of your collaborators, Gavin Johnson, and if he's watching at some point, if they're watching, like hello at some point. But and with him, you had taught mobile technology classes
Mhm.
and so forth. So I was kind of wondering how maybe in that space or more recent at York, have you thought about sort of these mobile technologies or taught them in what ways have you done that?
Yeah,
Very
so
long-winded question, sorry, but
no, you know what? There's this wonderful book by Clara Lewitt, and it's about mobile technologies for the writing classroom. And one of the ways that Gavin, and when we were thinking about designing the course, we thought about how in that book, writing with mobile technologies is sort of presented. So you can write about mobile technologies, you can write for mobile technologies, or you can write with mobile technology. Or you can think of the word compose, write or compose, composing about, composing for, or composing with. And so in every sort of assignment or project, we have to think, okay, what exactly are we doing here? For example, right now, Gavin and I are writing about mobile technology. We're working on an article together where we're looking at different mobile apps and I guess ethical and social justice issues,
Mhm.
particularly, for example, we're looking at ride sharing apps and
Mm.
looking at their histories and sort of writing about them within the framework of digital cultural rhetoric. So we're doing that, which is more writing about mobile technologies. And then we have writing for mobile technologies, which would be what I described earlier, the app that I'm trying to design around family reunions. And then writing with mobile technologies, which is sort of what you were talking about a little bit earlier, thinking about, okay, how do we use our mobile technologies to grab the sort of raw data, whether it's an audio or a video, and what are some of the affordances of being able to have this tool where we can record and gather all kinds of raw data to compile an awesome piece. So usually we think about it in those sort of three ways, and it just depends on the assignment, and we've had the opportunity to sort of work with all
Mhm.
three. And I think that's an important focus because all of those, writing with, writing for, or writing about, you're asking different kinds of questions. And so
Mhm.
that's where we typically start when we're thinking about mobile technologies and composing.
Fantastic. I mean, and that sounds like that three sort of part approach, with, for, about, and so forth. Seems like a great way to like get like an entire course, right? 12 weeks, you could sort of break it out like month, because we do move very quickly here at York. So
Yes.
I will take that class at some point if I can. If we're allowed to do that sort of stuff, that sounds amazing. Um, so, do you have any recommendations for? I mean, it's a very broad question. I know we talked about this a little ahead of time, but like mobile apps or programs, especially in relation to writing, things that you've recommended to students or you practice yourself, when you're working on documents and manuscripts and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so um, transparency, it's been a while since the class. So I have some, like I think for composing with for video, in addition to some of the tools that you mentioned, we were using, I think, Splice and Filmora Go.
Okay.
I don't remember where those technologies are now because sometimes the world moves quickly and people, they were free, which was why we were using them, but hopefully they're still free or somewhat affordable. But as we all know, when something works well, usually there's that little, if you go pro or pay this amount, you can get a little bit more in terms of the features. But there are some awesome things that York has through Adobe and, different kinds of ways that you all can experiment with in terms of working with video and technologies. I think that I am one of those people when it comes to writing. We're thinking about some traditional types of writing, traditional genres. I am one of those people that I use my mobile technology, my mobile phone, if it's for the invention process. So Notes, I love my Notes app so much.
Yeah.
So I have an iPhone. So I've noticed recently that you can do different things within the iPhone Notes app. Like you can, add images or link here and there. And I'm like, they're picking up on, what us as writing teachers and digital media teachers have already, sort of thought about, that writing is just, it's very expansive, and to have more ways to link to your ideas is really cool. And then wireframing, if you're interested in that, I have this whole folder here. I was looking through my phone like, what do I have that can contribute to this conversation? But let's say if you are interested in writing for mobile technologies, I have a few wireframing apps, like there's Xpage, InVision, Sketchbook, and Sketch. And then there's one called Pop. So those are all sort of free wireframing apps. Some of them are not free. They're not totally free, at least. They have additional features you can buy if you want to, but I say always start free.
Yeah.
The best. But those were really fun in terms of thinking through writing for mobile technologies. But yeah, I think that there's probably more tools and technologies out there since the time that I've searched. So always be on the lookout for what's new and what's next. That's the way of the world in terms of how we live today. So I'm sure there's some new apps and different kinds of technologies out there to get us.
Yeah. I'm just trying to link to this. I think I've got this Xpage one. That's interesting. I think on the link. If it lets us come up here in the app. Yeah, and the fact that you can do that actually on your phone, prototype it on your phone too, it kind of cuts having to export it to there and check and things like that. So that's great. And maybe I can link in the notes. I'll follow up with you in the description some other sources you've used or things like that
awesome.
As well. Yeah, I'll add this one to there. That sounds. So there's so much you can work with, especially on the mobile end. If you're doing prototyping, you were an assistant director, as we were talking about earlier, for DMAC, or the Digital Media and Composition Institute at Ohio State. Do you have recommendations for students, especially for getting started with video? We've talked to, I know, I've mentioned to you, I'm always kind of thinking about what can I do as much as possible with my phone, capture footage. But I wanted to put that to you, recommendations you might have for, getting started with just maybe doing some of that adaptation work with something like a mobile app for video.
I think what I learned particularly from that experience at DMAC, so the wonderful director of DMAC, the directors, well, there's several, of course. There was Cindy Self and Scott DeWitt when I first started, and now I believe John Jones over at Ohio State has taken the reins of directing. But one of the really cool things as a DMAC participant, and then on the other side actually working to plan DMAC, we really want the participants to dive deep into that sort of invention phase of having working with the tool without an agenda at first, because that can get complicated when there's like this assignment or something set before us, and we're like, okay, how do we do this specific thing? So one of the early sort of assignments in DMAC is just to go out and film something or collect some audio or collect some video. And I think that doing that with our phones would be really, really interesting. I think we do the same things, out in the world. When we are ready to take a picture or take video, we take video. But what happens if you decide to walk outside or walk around your home wherever you live and think about what you can grab, what kind of video shots might be interesting, maybe from your window or maybe from another spot, and just being able to grab that sort of raw data and look at it and think about what comes to mind as you are sort of looking through get the data you've gathered without an agenda. That can lead to some really interesting projects. It can lead to some really interesting discoveries about the affordances of sort of working with our mobile technologies. And one of my favorite things to do, I think, when I'm thinking about mobile technologies, when you sort of do a search on YouTube or just watching people they've made entire videos from their phone, I'm always really inspired by where they stand or sort of the angle in which they sort of capture the data. So I think with mobile technologies, we can get lower, we can get higher, depending on the extension we have. Sometimes we have tripods, but other times if you're using some kind of extension where you can sort of capture from up top or capture from down low and angle up, it's always really interesting to see how mobile technologies, because they are so much smaller, can allow us to really get at some more angles and way more affordable ways than buying sort of expensive cameras and one camera for this and one camera for that angle and another camera for that one. So I think mobile technologies allows a wide array of capture. So that will be my two pieces of advice for exploring writing with video in mobile technologies. See what you can do without an agenda and experiment with angles.
Yeah, I mean, and I remember when I went to DMAC, I think an attendee and I, our participant and I, we went out and we just filmed somebody who was playing with their dog for about 10, 15 minutes. And then we asked the two people who were there, like, tell us this story about, like, why you brought your dog to campus and, like, sort of how they sort of figure into just your daily things or what you're doing for the day, and tell us the story of the dog. And it was this really fun piece that we put together, but we just learned that by being out and about, right? So that's a great idea for invention. Just turn your phone on and maybe document, part of your day or something like that. And it reminds me, I've particularly liked in digital authoring classes that we teach, to actually have students like go through and talk about a day of their composing process, like, or what preferred tools they have, and just to spend time filming that or passing the camera to somebody else. And it's much easier to do it with something like this.
Yes.
Like they hand somebody else a camera, and selfie sticks and all that stuff now seem to really support that approach.
For sure.
I think really cool idea. I want to just real quick, I forgot, you reminded me of something that I was thinking I could actually show folks in this chat. Just pull this up. This is a really cool thing I've got to point out, and it's totally free as well. And it's kind of almost merging these ideas of, the work we're doing a lot of times, like on our screens and Zoom calls and so forth, and then what we can do mobily, and how do we sort of meet in the middle there. So this is called, it's by Reincubate. It's an app called Camo. I think it's for both platforms, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, like you can get it on Google Play and other things. And you can actually turn your phone into a webcam. And so these phones now, especially iPhone and so forth, are so high power with their cameras, like the latest, Google One, or Pixel 6, what have you. I'm always forgetting the names. You can turn that into like a pretty high quality webcam for calls. And so it's just taking a matter of like hooking up the USB cords and so forth to your laptop to make that happen.
Yeah.
That seems like much more, I would just say affordable and also just efficient than having to like have a separate webcam for this, or, in my case, using like an actual Canon camera that's hooked up to it. There's a lot involved in that. And if a Cam app can help us, do that a little more efficiently, I think it'd be interesting to try.
Yeah, that's I think working with mobile technologies, the cool thing is you can always sort of make a toolkit. So what are the different apps and resources, whether it's sort of internal within the device or external, whether it's that selfie stick, or what are the toolkits that will help you achieve the desired result or the desired look and feel of your mobile composition. So yeah, it looks like another one that would be really good.
Excellent. So Laura, what are you working on right now? You're teaching a class, wrapping that up. We're all getting ready for the crunch that is, the end of the term. It's unbelievable that we'll be done in just a matter of weeks. But yeah, what else are you working on in terms of writing, research, etc.?
Yeah, so working on, of course, wrapping up the course and focusing on research and next direction. So definitely working on a particular article that looks at the ways that Black families are technical communicators and looks at the writing that they do to plan and sustain reunions. Working on the piece I mentioned earlier with my co-collaborator about mobile technologies, and particularly that one is about race and gender and mobile technologies, looking at ride-sharing apps, looking at sort of mapping apps, whether we're looking at like a native land or Google Maps, and really looking into the histories of some of the more popular apps, and looking at the ways that they can better service and be more, be more attentive to the histories of multiple people who've contributed to the ideas of those apps. So we're definitely looking forward to that piece. And what else? Working on another piece about kinship rhetorics. So that's sort of a theory that I'm working through. So looking at the ways that we use the language of kinship in our everyday communication. And yeah, those are the three projects that I'm sort of juggling right now.
Excellent. I've asked you, as a little follow-up, I mean, when you've been researching Black family reunions, have you been using video to kind of, archive what goes on in those sort of interactions as people are composing and such?
So that was absolutely a part of the plan for the phase 2 of the project before. So I collected data starting in 2018, I think. And so my goal, of course, it was a pandemic summer, so a lot of families were not gathering. So the pivot I had to make is to sort of better understand what were families doing in place of that if they weren't canceling. And so some really interesting things happened around families learning Zoom and figuring out Zoom, but maybe Zoom not being ready for that because Zoom is still, it's very like corporate, professional, like leave meeting, end meeting, when meeting is not always it sort of connotes something rhetorically that it's not what everyone was using Zoom for. So maybe, once we get the research out there, Zoom will say, hey, we're more than just this like professional meeting corporate space, and maybe our language should reflect that. So who knows, maybe that will happen one day. But hopefully as families start to gather more, depending on what happens as we move through the pandemic, I cannot wait to be able to just gather some footage of what happens at these reunions, not just at the event themselves, but the ways families are sort of navigating technology, technological platforms, and figuring out what's best for their family when it comes to planning these large events.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And I imagine actually gets me thinking and very excited to like think about just the words themselves, like meeting versus guest versus
Hmm.
hangouts, gatherings, and all that sort of stuff. We're seeing like those different terms in video platforms.
Absolutely.
I'm reminded that like I went to a conference. It was the Rhetoric Society of America Institute, um, and they did a sort of gather town or something like that. I think that's what it's called.
Mhm. Yep.
And you could actually sort of take your little avatar, walk up to somebody else, and then their video would fade in.
So great.
It fade in and fade. I mean, yeah, it was a little threw me off because I wasn't used to that technology. But I think that's what we're seeing is, yeah, depending on the task, what's going to be most appropriate. I
Yeah.
will just say I'm also with you. Like my dad had his like sort of 60th birthday on Zoom last year, and it was a nightmare because then when he knew like keep your headphones off, you can't be in the same room while you're sort of or put your headphones on if you want to do that.
Yeah.
It was pretty kind of comical, I would say. But it was they had to learn sort of on the fly how that worked.
Right. It reminds me so much of Andre Brock's work, who talked about, Brock talked about how it was the Black users of Twitter that sort of showed Twitter its power. And this sort of reminds me of Zoom, where it's really those who aren't necessarily in corporate spaces showing Zoom its power and what you're capable of doing, because we're using your tool in this way, but it's not exactly designed for those of us who weren't in the spaces where Zoom was sort of born. And so hopefully Zoom listens and comes up with some new features that makes it more accessible, makes it more user friendly, and we'll see. Or if not, others will start to design technologies that do work for various audiences.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Much more to talk about with this. I'm excited to see future classwork you're doing to talk about these sort of topics and issues and all that forthcoming research that's certainly keeping you busy. So best of luck with wrapping up the term and all that. And thanks for chatting with us. It's been awesome. We'd love to have you back maybe next term and as your sort of projects progress. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope everyone enjoys, and feel free to reach out anyone if you have any questions. I'm happy to chat.
Absolutely. Okay. Thanks, Dr. Allen. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Take care.
Okay. So much fun. Absolutely love having chats here on the stream just to really make more sense, of these kind of current conversations about working with video, working with mobile technologies, how you could prototype applications, and even just think through argumentation through prototyping applications, or as Dr. Al was saying, going out and actually capturing footage of your sort of everyday happenings and maybe later on telling a story. We can do a lot with our phones now as they become sort of 4K oriented with video. They capture pretty good audio, I'd say. If you want to know more about how sort of sound works with mobile tech, do check out last week's video. There's a scene in which I actually take my coat and wrap it around me just to capture some audio to demonstrate that you can do some isolation techniques pretty quickly just with your coat and your phone. All right. So what questions do you have so far, about these kind of technologies? Maybe on some things we heard from Dr. Allen that we talked about earlier, which was the video and Headliner app, things that you might have on your mind. And let's just go ahead and move to that one. I can linger for just a second with everybody just to maybe get your thoughts on these applications. Other things, in response to this, do you think Headliner could be something really useful for, let's say, a course presentation, a way to kind of maybe think differently about your argument by putting up a quick sort of Creative Commons video over a reading of your actual piece? Maybe some thoughts you have. And so while you're thinking about that, I want to end by recommending one more application that you could work with. Now, Headliner.app is really useful, and so is something like WeVideo or Adobe Spark, which has been used and talked about, I think, in not on past streams, but certainly we could talk more about those web-based applications. So if you're looking for something that's a little more robust, I do recommend something called OpenShot, which I'll link to here. We can kind of talk about that a little bit. If we had more time, I would show you how to sort of download OpenShot and stuff like that, but I'll just reference it for you in this case. And we got a question in the chat. Let's see. Jason is saying, how do you get TAs to get on board? I have to write blogs, but I never feel my writing gets my emotions across. And so, Jason, I was wondering, are you referring to something like TAs getting on board with video kind of expression and so forth? Curious about that. Let me copy this URL real quick so we can check it out. Okay, so yeah, that makes sense, Jason. Well, first of all, just feel free. I wonder if you could ask them if that's a way you could start. So if you wanted to, for example, just turn on your camera on, let's say, your desktop or your laptop and just start talking about, let's say, the prompt that they've given you to blog about. So maybe it's about, a reading for the week. And if you're able to, turn on the camera and just say, hey, I want to give you some thoughts on this. I wonder what they would say. And, sometimes what I'll do just to give maybe someone who's hesitant or can't quite, or is having trouble kind of seeing the idea that you're proposing, you could just do a quick beta test of it. So using something like Headliner, or again, if you were to record it on your phone or desktop, you could record it and say, hey, what do you think about this? Keep it short, keep it 30 seconds or something like that. And then from that point, send it to them. So if you could put it on YouTube or export it in some way, that could be really interesting. Another option is, I didn't even think about this for video recording. There's so many options that you can explore. Talk about this. If you were doing a reading, for example, you could also do something like this. Pull this up. This is also a really effective tool that some students have used in my class in the past for video journals. So what they'll do is do a screen recording through something like Screencastify, and they might put like a reading up on the screen or talk through something they're designing, and it'll capture your audio and video and then immediately put that onto their Google Drive, or they can even export it to YouTube later on. And let's see what you're saying over here as well. The blogs have to deal with Indigenous issues, and being an Indigenous man, issues really spill into different areas that do not directly ask for. Okay. So yeah, I think like if you're saying that, like I'm affiliated with this positionality already, and I really want to express my ideas, and especially like, I don't feel like I can get that emotion across just on the page. Do you mind if I sort of offer this video recording that still touches on these ideas? And I think what you might want to do too, just to try this out, is give yourself a quick kind of script of things you want to discuss, where you want to get to, and then you could give them that outline as well if you wanted to try that. Yeah, well, that's great. Screencastify is awesome. This is, a lot of times really good for recording and editing videos in which you're trying to explain an idea on the screen. So I'm glad that could be useful as well. So what I want to recommend, and this is also in the description. Yes, no problem. Jason, happy to help. Is in the show description, you'll see a link to OpenShot. Now, if you're not familiar with, Apple iMovie, or let's say that something you might want to use on the Windows side is a little limiting, you can turn to Screencastify. And I'm going to go ahead and stop this so we can go back to that. Takes a few more steps when you're kind of sharing this on this app. So yeah, OpenShot, it's an open source program. And totally free. No sign up required, anything like that. It goes right to your desktop. It's for Mac, Windows, and Linux. I don't think there's a mobile version, unfortunately, but nonetheless, it's very, similar to other kind of drag and drop platforms where you can import videos and audio files and then start doing some basic editing from there. And so in the description I have a recommended video you could download, which is it's basically like another abstract sort of picture you could work with, and it looks just like this. Let's see if we can find it. An ink painting, yes. So it looks just like this. You'll download that and then put it into OpenShot from there. I also have the audio file, once again, linked to Power Words in English. You could sort of practice by importing those two. Unfortunately, sort of OpenShot is a little resource intensive. So I'm afraid that if I open that, everything would come crashing down here on the stream. And we don't want to do that because that happened before and it wasn't fun. There's also a suggestion I have for sessions.blue, which will allow you to import sound that is Creative Commons available. So in Jason's case, if Jason is looking to do something like a video recording of him speaking about Indigenous issues and wants to layer that with some relevant music tracks, this is a great resource as well. All they ask for is credit where credit's due. So if you put it on YouTube, you want to link to these resources that you've downloaded. And so you can't really hear the file. I'm not quite sure, but if you can on your end, but there's all kinds of fun stuff on here that you could work with. Okay. So OpenShot, it's fairly easy to use. I would just say overall, it's presented some challenges to students just because I think it likes to use a lot of resources on applications. So just kind of be aware of that when you're working with it. Start small. It might seem kind of overwhelming once you start putting in files and so forth, but it still follows conventions and standards of video making. And I find that it's a good way into these more robust programs that folks work with. And all these images you see here on the right side of my screen will give you a sense of what it's like if you're able to download it. But for the most part, going back to something like Screencastify, Adobe Spark, or as we saw at the top of the stream, Headliner can do some pretty amazing work with just a few clicks, some signups and limited resources. So that's always what my focus is for this. How can we do things that are pretty efficient, more than likely free, even if there's, some challenges that come along with that, some limitations that come along with it. I would just say, lastly, if you're working with OpenShot, save often and work with just a few files. As I said, one video at a time, one track, etc. Okay. Maybe you have some other questions, so I'll hang out for just a minute. Feel free to pose those as well, then we'll wrap things up. Just want to end by once again reminding you of two things I always do here on the stream. So we have next week, self-care and the writing process we'll be talking about. So what are some things you do to give yourself a break, to take care of yourself while you're in the middle of working on big projects or even small assignments, blogs, for example? We're going to talk about that and perhaps have a guest chat as well. Also, every Thursday from 10:30 to 2:30 for the remainder of the semester, I will be doing one-on-one appointments in the Writing Center. And if that time doesn't work for you, go to one-on-one appointments, the link here that's on the Writing Center website, and feel free to sign up for a one-on-one appointment. Whether you are a first-year student or a postdoc, a graduate student, so a rising undergraduate, you're going to have a lot of resources here. Some great folks that can help you work through initial ideas to the final moments of submission for, let's say, like a graduate application or a cover letter or something like that. The Writing Center has a ton of people who can help you. And I love doing it because it's one-on-one time that I get with students for about an hour, or 50 minutes or so is our typical approach for Writing Center appointments. All right. Well, thanks again. This has been awesome, folks, talking about writing with video and mobile technologies. So I will talk to you all next week. And until then, have a good week.